Hey guys, tonight's story isn't about ghosts in a dark hallway or creatures under the bed. It's about something ancient and patient, out in the wild, something that waited and watched. Two friends went on what was supposed to be one last lad's trip to South Africa. Rugby, beaches, a little fun before marriage and responsibility. But one of them couldn't resist exploring something a little darker. An unfinished tourist site, a battlefield from a forgotten war, a place where people went missing and never came back the same. This is part one of a three-part story. Now get cozy, put your phone down, and listen closely to what they found in the abandoned hills of KwaZulu-Natal. This all happened more than 15 years ago now. I've never told my side of the story, not really. This story has only ever been told by the authorities, news channels, and paranormal communities. No one has ever really known the true story. Not even me. I first met Brad all the way back in university, when we both joined up for the school's rugby team. I think it was our shared love of rugby that made us the best of friends. And it wasn't for that, I doubt we'd even have been mates. We were completely different people, Brad and I. Whereas I was always responsible and mature for my age, all Brad ever wanted to do was have fun and mess around. Although we were still young adults, and not yet graduated, Brad had somehow found himself newly engaged. Having spent a fortune already on a silly old ring, Brad then said he wanted one last lad's holiday before he was finally tied down. Trying to decide on where we would go, we both then remembered the British Lions rugby team were touring that year. If you're unfamiliar with rugby, or don't know what the British Lions is, basically, every 4 years, the best rugby players from England, Scotland, Wales, and Ireland are chosen to play either New Zealand, Australia, or South Africa. That year, the Lions were going to play the world champions at the time, the South African Springboks. Realizing what a great opportunity this was, of not only enjoying a lad's holiday in South Africa, but finally going to watch the Lions play, we applied for student loans, worked extra shifts where possible, and Brad even took a good chunk out of his own wedding funds. We planned on staying in the city of Durban for 2 weeks, in the, how do you pronounce it? KwaZulu-Natal province. We would first hit the beach, a few nightclubs, then watch the first of the 3 rugby games, before flying 12 long hours back home. While organizing everything for our trip, my dad then tells me Durban was not very far from where one of our ancestors had died, back when South Africa was still a British and partly Dutch colony. My 4-time great-grandfather had fought and died at the famous Battle of Rorke's Drift, where a handful of British soldiers, mostly Welshmen, defended a remote outpost against an army of 4,000 fierce Zulu warriors. Basically a 300 scenario. If you're interested, there is an old Hollywood film about it. Makes you proud to be Welsh, doesn't it? That's easy for you to say, Dad. You're not the one who's only half Welsh. Feeling intrigued, I do my research into the battle, where I learn the area the battle took place had been turned into a museum and tourist center, as well as a nearby hotel lodge. Well, it would have been a tourist center, but during construction back in the 90s, several builders had mysteriously gone missing. Although a handful of them were located, right bang in the middle of the South African wilderness, all that remained of them were, well, remains. For whatever reason they died or went missing, scavengers had then gotten to the bodies. Although construction on the tourist center and hotel lodge continued, only weeks after finding the bodies, 2 more construction workers had again vanished. They were found, mind you, but as with the ones before them, they were found deceased and scavenged. With these deaths and disappearances, a permanent halt was finally brought to construction. To this day, the Rorke's Drift Tourist Center and Hotel Lodge remain abandoned, an apparently haunted place. Realizing the Rorke's Drift area was only a 4-hour drive from Durban, and feeling an intense desire to pay respects to my 4-time great-grandfather, I try all I can to convince Brad we should make the road trip. Are you mad? I'm not driving 4 hours through a desert when I could be drinking lagers at the beach. This is supposed to be a lad's holiday. It's a savanna, Brad, not a desert. And the place is supposed to be haunted. I thought you were into all that? Yeah, when I was like 12. Although he takes a fair bit of convincing, Brad eventually agrees to the idea, not that it stops him from complaining. Hiring ourselves a Jeep, as though we're going on safari, we drive through the intense heat of the savanna landscape, where, even with all the windows down, our Jeep for hire is no less like an oven. Jesus Christ, I can't breathe in here, Brad whines. Despite driving 4 hours through exhausting heat, I still don't remember a time he isn't complaining. What if there's lions or hyenas at that place? You said it's in the middle of nowhere, right? No, Brad. There's no predatory animals in the Rorke's Drift area. Believe me, I checked. Well, that's a relief. Circle of life, my arse. 4 hours and 26 minutes into our drive, we finally reach the Rorke's Drift area. Finding ourselves enclosed by distant hills on all sides, we drive along a single stretch of sloping dirt road, which cuts through an endless landscape of long beige grass, dispersed every now and then with thin, solitary trees. Continuing along the dirt road, we pass by the first signs of civilization we had been absent from for the last hour and a half. On one side of the road are a collection of thatch roof huts, and further along the road we go, we then pass by the occasional shanty farm, along with closed-off fields of red cattle. Growing up in Wales, I saw farm animals on a regular basis, but I had never seen cattle with horns this big. Christ, Reese. Look at the size of them ones Brad mentions, as though he really is on safari. Although there are clearly residents here, by the time we reach our destination, we encounter no people whatsoever, not even the occasional vehicle passing by. Pulling to a stop outside the entrance of the tourist center, Brad and I peer through the entranceway to see an old building in the distance, perched directly at the bottom of a lonesome hill. "That's it in there?" asks Brad underwhelmingly. God, this place really is a shithole. There's barely anything here. Well, they never finished building this place, Brad. That's what makes it abandoned. Leaving our Jeep for hire, we then make our way through the entranceway to stretch our legs and explore around the center grounds. Approaching the lonesome hill, we soon see the museum building is nothing more than an old brick house, containing little remnants of weathered white paint. The roof of the museum is red and rust-eaten, supported by warped wooden pillars creating a porch directly over the entrance door. While we approach the museum entrance, I try giving Brad a history lesson of the Rorke's Drift battle. Not that he shows any interest. So, before they turned all this into a museum, this is where the old hospital would have been for the soldiers. Wow, that's great. Continuing to lecture Brad, simply to punish him for his sarcasm, Brad then interrupts my train of thought. Reese? What the hell are those? What the hell is what? Peering forward to where Brad is pointing, I soon see amongst the shade of the porch are 5 dark shapes pinned on the walls. I can't see what they are exactly, but something inside me now chooses to raise alarm. Entering the porch to get a better look, we then see the dark round shapes are merely nothing more than African tribal masks. Masks, displaying a far from welcoming face. Well, that's disturbing. Turning to study a particular mask on the wall, the wooden face appears to resemble some kind of predatory animal. Its snout is long and narrow, directly over a hollowed-out mouth containing 2 rows of rough, jagged teeth. Although we don't know what animal this mask is depicting, judging from the snout and long pointed ears, this animal is clearly supposed to be some sort of canine. What do you suppose that's meant to be? A hyena or something? Brad ponders. I don't think so. Hyena's ears are round, not pointy. Also, there aren't any spots. A wolf, then? Wolves in Africa, Brad? I say condescendingly. Well, what do you think it is? I don't know. Right. So, stop acting like I'm an idiot. Bringing our attention away from the tribal masks, we then try our luck with entering through the door. Turning the handle, I try and force the door open, hoping the old wooden frame has simply wedged the door shut. Ah, that's a shame. I was hoping it wasn't locked. Gutted the 2 of us can't explore inside the museum, I was ready to carry on exploring the rest of the grounds. but Brad clearly has different ideas. "Well, that's all right," he says, before striding up to the door and taking me fully by surprise. Brad unexpectedly slams the outsole of his trainer against the crumbling wood of the door, and with a couple more tries, he successfully breaks the door open to my absolute shock. "What have you just done, Brad?" I yell, scolding him. "Oh, I'm sorry. Didn't you want to go inside? That's vandalism, that is." Although I'm now ready to head back to the Jeep before anyone heard our breaking in, Brad, in his own careless way, convinces me otherwise. "Reese, there's no one here. We're literally in the middle of nowhere right now. No one cares we're here, and no one probably cares what we're doing. So, let's just go inside and get this over with, yeah?" Feeling guilty about committing forced entry, I'm still too determined to explore inside the museum. And so, with a probable look of shame on my sunburned face, I reluctantly join Brad through the doorway. "Can't believe you've just done that, Brad." "Yeah. Well, I'm getting married in a month. I'm stressed." Entering inside the museum, the room we now stand in is completely pitch black. So dark is the room, even with the beaming light from the broken door. I have to run back to the Jeep and grab our flashlights. Exploring around the darkness, we then make a number of findings. Hanging from the wall on the room's right-hand side is an old replica painting of the Rorke's Drift battle. Further down, my flashlight then discovers a poster for the 1964 film Zulu, starring Michael Caine, as well as what appears to be an inauthentic cowhide war shield. Moving further into the center, we then stumble upon a long wooden table, displaying a rather impressive miniature of the Rorke's Drift battle, in which tiny figurines of British soldiers defend the burning outpost from spear-wielding Zulu warriors. Why did they leave all this behind? I wonder to Brad. Wouldn't they have brought it all away with them? "Why are you asking me? This all looks rather shit," Brad startlingly wails. "What? What is it?" I ask. Startled beyond belief, I now follow Brad's flashlight with my own towards the far back of the room, and when the light exposes what had caused his outburst, I soon realize the darkness around us has played a mere trick of the mind. "For heaven's sake, Brad, they're just mannequins." Keeping our flashlights on the back of the room, what we see are 5 mannequins dressed as British soldiers from the Rorke's Drift battle, identifiable by their famous red coat uniforms and beige pith helmets. Although these are nothing more than old museum props, it is clear to see how Brad misinterpreted the mannequins for something else. Christ, I thought I was seeing ghosts for a second. Continuing to shine our flashlights upon these mannequins, the stiff expressions on their plastic faces are indeed ghostly. So much so, Brad is more than ready to leave the museum. "Right, I think I've seen enough. Let's head out, yeah?" Exiting from the museum, we then take to exploring further around the site grounds. Although the grounds mostly consist of long, overgrown grass, we next explore the empty stone brick insides of the old Rorke's Drift Chapel before making our way down the hill to what I want to see most of all. Marching through the long grass, we next come upon a waist-high stone wall. Once we climb over to the other side, what we find is a weathered white pillar, a memorial to the British soldiers who died at Rorke's Drift. Approaching the pillar, I then enthusiastically scan down the list of names until I find one name in particular: Foster, C. James, C. Jones, T. There he is. Williams, J. What? That's your great-granddad, is it? Yeah, that's him. Private John Williams. Fought and died at Rorke's Drift, defending the glory of the British Empire. "You don't think his ghost is here, do you?" remarks Brad, either serious or mockingly. "For your sake, I hope not. The men in my family were never fond of Englishmen. That's because they're more fond of sheep." "Brad, that's no way to talk about your sister." After paying respects to my 4-time great-grandfather, Brad and I then make our way back to the Jeep. Driving back down the way we came, we turn down a thin slither of dirt back road, where 10 or so minutes later, We are directly outside the grounds of the Rorke's Drift Hotel Lodge. Again, leaving the Jeep, we enter the cracked pavement of the grounds, having mostly given way to vegetation, which leads us to the 3 round and large buildings of the lodge. The 3 circular buildings are painted a rather warm orange, as so to give the impression the walls are made from dirt, where on top of them, the thatch decor of the roofs have already fallen apart, matching the boarded-up windows of the terraces. So, this is where the builders went missing? Afraid so, I reply, all the while admiring the architecture of the buildings. It's a shame they abandoned this place. It would have been spectacular. So, what happened to them, again? No one really knows. They were working on site one day and some of them just vanished. I remember something about there being... Reese. Grabbing me by the arm, I turned to see Brad staring dead ahead at the larger of the 3 buildings. What is it? I whisper. There, in the shade of that building. There's something there. Peering back over, I can now see the dark outline of something rummaging through the shade. Although I at first feel a cause for alarm, I then determine whatever is hiding is no larger than an average-sized dog. It's probably just a stray dog, Brad. They're always hiding in places like this. No, it was walking on 2 legs, I swear. Continuing to stare over at the shade of the building, we wait patiently for whatever this was to make its appearance known. And by the time it does, me and Brad realize what had given us caution is not a stray dog or any other wild animal, but something we could communicate with. Brad, you donk. It's just a child. Well, what's he doing hiding in there? Upon realizing they have been spotted, the young child comes out of hiding to reveal a young boy, no older than 10. His thin, brittle arms and bare feet protruding from a pair of ragged garments. I swear, if that's a ghost... Stop it, Brad. The young boy stares back at us as he keeps a weary distance away. Not wanting to frighten him, I raise my hand in a greeting gesture before I shout over, "Hello!" Reese, don't talk to him. Only seconds after I greet him from afar, the young boy turns his heels and quickly scurries away, vanishing behind the curve of the building. "Wait!" I yell after him. "We didn't mean to frighten you!" Reese, leave him. He was probably up to no good anyway. Cautiously aware the boy may be running off to tell others of our presence, me and Brad decide to head back to the Jeep and call it a day. However, making our way out of the grounds, I notice our Jeep in the distance looks somewhat different, almost as though it was sinking into the entranceway dirt. Feeling in my gut something is wrong, I hurry over towards the Jeep, and to my utter devastation, I now see what is different. "Oh God, no!" I cry out. Circling round the Jeep, me and Brad realize every single one of the vehicle's tires have been emptied of air. Or more accurately, the tires have been slashed. What the hell, Reese? I know, Brad. I know. Who the hell did this? Further inspecting the Jeep and the surrounding area, Brad and I then find a trail of small, bare footprints leading away from the Jeep and disappearing into the brush. They're child footprints, Brad. It was that little shit, wasn't it? No wonder he ran off in a hurry. How could it have been? We only just saw him at the other end of the grounds. Well, who else would have done it? Obviously another child. Brad and I honestly don't know what we are going to do. There is no phone signal out here, and with only 1 spare tire in the back, we are more or less good and stranded. Well, that's just great. The game's in a couple of days and now we're going to miss it. What a great holiday this turned out to be. Oh, would you shut up about that bloody game? We'll be fine, Brad. How? How are we going to be fine? We're in the middle of nowhere and we don't even have a phone signal. Well, we don't have any other choice, do we? Obviously, we're going to have to walk back the way we came and find help from one of those farms. Are you mad? It's going to take us a good half-hour to walk back up there. Reese, look around. The sun's already starting to go down and I don't want to be out here when it's dark. Spending the next few minutes arguing, we eventually decide on staying the night inside the Jeep, where by the next morning, we would try and find help from one of the nearby shanty farms. By the time the darkness has well and truly set in, me and Brad have been inside the Jeep for several hours. The night air outside the Jeep is so dark, We cannot see a single thing, not even a piece of shrubbery. Although I'm exhausted from the hours of driving and unbearable heat, I am still too scared to sleep, which is more than I can say for Brad. Even though Brad is visibly more terrified than myself, it was going to take more than being stranded in the African wilderness to deprive him of his sleep. After a handful more hours go by, it appears I did in fact drift off to sleep, because stirring around in the driver's seat, my eyes opened to a blinding light seeping through the Jeep's back windows. Turning around, I realized the lights are coming from another vehicle parked directly behind us, and amongst the silent night air outside, all I can hear is the humming of this other vehicle's engine. Not knowing whether help has graciously arrived, or if something far worse is in stall, I quickly try and shake Brad awake beside me. "Brad, wake up. Wake up." Huh. What? "Brad, there's a vehicle behind us." Oh, thank God. Without even thinking about it first, Brad tries exiting the Jeep. But after I pull him back in, I then tell him we don't know who they are or what they want. "I think they want to help us, Reese." "Oh, don't be an idiot. Do you have any idea what the crime rate is like in this country?" Trying my best to convince Brad to stay inside the Jeep, our conversation is suddenly broken by loud and almost deafening beeps from the mysterious vehicle. "God, what the hell do they want?" Brad wails next to me, covering his ears. "I think they want us to get out." The longer the two of us remain undecided, the louder and longer the beeps continue to be. The aggressive beeping is so bad by this point, Brad and I ultimately decide we have no choice but to exit the Jeep and confront whoever this is. All right, we're getting out. Opening our doors to the dark night outside, we move around to the back of the Jeep, where the other vehicle's headlights blind our sight. Still making our way round, we then hear a door open from the other vehicle, followed by heavy and cautious footsteps. Blocking the bright headlights from my eyes, I try and get a look at whoever is strolling towards us. Although the night around is too dark and the headlights still too bright, I can see the tall silhouette of a single man, in what appears to be worn farmer's clothing and hiding his face underneath a tattered baseball cap. Once me and Brad see the man striding towards us, we both halt firmly by our Jeep. Taking a few more steps forward, the stranger also stops a meter or two in front of us, and after a few moments of silence, taken up by the stranger's humming engine moving through the headlights, the man in front of us finally speaks. "You know you boys are trespassing?" the voice says, gurgling the deep words of English. Not knowing how to respond, me and Brad pause on one another, before I then work up the courage to reply, We didn't know we were trespassing." The man now doesn't respond, appearing to just stare at us both with unseeing eyes. "I see you boys are having some car trouble," he then says, breaking the silence. Ready to confirm this to the man, Brad already beats me to it. "Yeah, no shit, mate. Some little turd came along and slashed our tires." Not wanting Brad's temper to get us in any more trouble, I give him a stern look, as so to say, "Let me do the talking. Little bastards round here. All of them," the man remarks, staring across from one another between the dirt of the two vehicles. The stranger once again breaks the awkward momentary silence. "Why don't you boys climb in? You'll die in the night out here. I'll take you to the next town." Brad and I again share a glance to each other, not knowing if we should accept this stranger's offer of help or take our chances the next morning. Personally, I believe if the man wanted to rob or kill us, he would probably have done it by now. Considering the man had pulled up behind us in an old Wrangler, and judging by his worn clothing, he was most likely a local farmer. Seeing the look of desperation on Brad's face, he is even more desperate than me to find our way back to Durban. And so, very probably taking a huge risk, Brad and I agree to the stranger's offer. "Right. Go get your stuff and put it in the back," the man says before returning to his Wrangler. After half an hour goes by, we are now driving on a single stretch of narrow dirt road. I'm sat in the front passengers next to the man, while Brad has to make do with sitting alone in the back. Just as it is with the outside night, the interior of the man's Wrangler is pitch black, with the only source of light coming from the headlights illuminating the road ahead of us. Although I'm sat opposite to the man, I still have a hard time seeing his face. From his gruff, thick accent, I can determine the man is a white South African. And judging from what I can see, the loose, leathery skin hanging down, as though he was wearing someone else's face, makes me believe he ranged anywhere from his late 50s to mid-60s. So, what you boys doing in South Africa? The man bellows from the driver's seat. Well, Brad's getting married in a few weeks, and so we decided to have one last lad's holiday. We're actually here to watch the Lions play the Springboks. Ah, rugby fans, the man replies, his thick accent hard to understand. Are you a rugby man? I inquire. Suppose. Played a bit when I was a young man, before they let just anyone play. Although the man's tone doesn't suggest so, I feel that remark is directly aimed at me. So, what brings you out to this god-forsaken place? Sightseeing? You could say that, I reply, now feeling too tired to carry on the conversation. So, is it true what happened back there? Brad unexpectedly yells from the back. I? You know, the missing builders. Did they really just vanish? Surprised to see Brad finally take an interest into the lore of Rourke's Drift, I rather excitedly wait for the man's response. Nah, that's all rubbish. Those builders died in a freak accident. Families sued the investors into bankruptcy. Joining in the conversation, I then inquired to the man, well, how about the way the bodies were found, in the middle of nowhere and scavenged by wild animals? Nah, rubbish. The man once again responds, no animals like that out here, unless the children were hungry. After 20 more minutes of driving, we still appear to be in the middle of nowhere, with no clear signs of a nearby town. The inside of the Wrangler is now dead quiet, with the only sound heard being the hum of the engine and the wheels grinding over dirt. So, are we nearly there yet? Or what? Complains Brad from the back seat, like a spoiled child on a family road trip. Not much longer now, says the man, without moving a single inch of his face away from the road in front of him. Right. It's just the games this weekend, and I'll be damned if I miss it. Right. The game. A few more unspoken minutes go by, and continuing to wonder how much longer till we reach the next town, the man's gruff voice then breaks through the silence. Either of you boys need to piss? Trying to decode what the man said, I turn back to Brad, before we then realize he's asking if either of us need to relieve ourselves. Although I was myself holding in a full bladder of urine from a day of non-stop hydrating, peering through the window to the pure darkness outside, neither I nor Brad wanted to leave the Wrangler. Although I already knew there were no big predatory animals in the area, I still don't like the idea of something like a snake coming along to bite my ankles, while I relieve myself on the side of the road. I'll wait, I think. Judging by his momentary pause, Brad is clearly still weighing his options, before he too decides to wait for the next town. Yeah, I think I'll hold it too. Are you sure about that? Asks the man. We still have a while to go. Remembering the man said only a few minutes ago we were already nearly there, I again turn to share a suspicious glance with Brad. Before again, the man tries convincing us to relieve ourselves now. I wouldn't use the toilets at that place. Haven't been cleaned in years. Without knowing whether the man is being serious, or if there's another motive at play, Brad, either serious or jokingly, inquires, there isn't a petrol station nearby any chance, is there? While me and Brad wait for the man's reply, almost out of nowhere, as though the Wrangler makes impact with something unexpectedly, the man pulls the brakes, grinding the vehicle to a screeching halt. Feeling the full impact from the seatbelt across my chest, I then turn to the man in confusion, and before me or Brad can even ask what is wrong, the man pulls something from the side of the driver's seat and aims it instantly towards my face. You could have made this easier, my boys. As soon as we realize what the man is holding, both me and Brad swing our arms instantly to the air, in a gesture for the man not to shoot us. Whoa, whoa! Don't shoot. Continuing to hold our hands up, the man then waves the gun back and forth frantically, from me in the passenger seat to Brad in the back. Both of you! Get your arses outside. Now. In no position to argue with him, we both open our doors to exit outside, all the while still holding up our hands. "Close the doors!" the man yells, moving away from the Wrangler as the man continues to hold us at gunpoint. All I can think is, take our stuff, but please don't kill us. Once we're a couple of meters away from the vehicle, the man pulls his gun back inside, and before winding up the window, he then says to us, whether it was genuine sympathy or not, "I'm sorry to do this to you boys. I really am." With his window now wound up, the man then continues away in his Wrangler, leaving us both by the side of the dirt road. "Why are you doing this?" I yell after him. "Why are you leaving us?" "Hey, you can't just leave. We'll die out here." As we continue to bark after the Wrangler, becoming ever more distant, the last thing we see before we are ultimately left in darkness is the fading red eyes of the Wrangler's taillights, having now vanished. Giving up our chase of the man's vehicle, we halt in the middle of the pitch-black road, and having foolishly left our flashlights back in our Jeep, our only source of light is the minuscule torch on Brad's phone, which he thankfully has on hand. Oh, great. Fantastic. Brad's face yells over the phone flashlight. What are we going to do now? Left stranded in the middle of nowhere, Brad and I have no choice but to follow along the dirt road in the hopes of reaching any kind of human civilization. Although we are both terrified beyond belief, I try my best to stay calm and not lose my head. But Brad's way of dealing with his terror is to both complain and blame me for the situation we're in. "We really had to visit your great-granddad's grave, didn't we?" "Drop it, Brad, will you? I told you coming here was a bad idea, and now look where we are. I don't even bloody know where we are." "Well, how the hell did I know this would happen?" I say defensively. "Really? And you're the one who's always calling me an idiot?" Leading the way with Brad's phone flashlight, we continue along the winding path of the dirt road which cuts through the plains and brush. Whenever me and Brad aren't arguing with each other to hide our fear, we're accompanied only by the silent night air and chirping of nocturnal insects. Minutes later into our trailing of the road, Brad then breaks the tense silence between us to ask me, "Why the hell did it mean so much for you to come here? Just to see your great-granddad's grave? How was that a risk worth taking?" Too tired, and most of all, too afraid to argue with Brad any longer, I simply tell him the truth as to why coming to Rourke's Drift was so important to me. "Brad, what do you see when you look at me?" I ask him, shining the phone flashlight towards my body. Brad takes a good look at me, before he then says in typical Brad fashion, "I see an angry black man in a red Welsh rugby shirt." "Exactly," I say. "That's all anyone sees. Growing up in Wales, all I ever heard was, 'You're not a proper Welshman 'cause your mum's a Nigerian.' It didn't even matter how good of a rugby player I was. As I continue on with my tangent, I notice Brad's angry, fearful face turns to what I can only describe as guilt, as though the many racist jokes he's said over the years has finally stopped being funny. But when I learned my great-granddad died fighting for the British Empire, oh, I don't know. It made me finally feel proud or something. Once I finish blindsiding Brad with my motives for coming here, we both remain in silence as we continue to follow the dirt road. Although Brad has never been the sympathetic type, I knew his silence was his way of showing it, before he finally responds, "Yeah, I kinda get that. I mean..." "Brad, hold on a minute," I interrupt, before he can finish. Although the quiet night had accompanied us for the last half hour, I suddenly hear a brief but audible rustling far out into the brush. "Do you hear that?" I ask, staying quiet for several seconds. We both try and listen out for an accompanying sound. "Yeah, I can hear it," Brad whispers. "What is that?" "I don't know. Whatever it is, it sounds close by." We again hear the sound of rustling coming from beyond the brush, but now the sound appears to be moving, almost like it's flanking us. "Reese, it's moving." "I know, Brad. What if it's a predator?" "There aren't any predators here. It's probably just a gazelle or something. Continuing to follow the rustling with our ears, I realize whatever is making it has more or less lost interest in us. All right, I think it's gone now. Come on, we better get moving. We return to following the road, not wanting to waste any more time with unknown sounds. But only 5 or so minutes later, feeling like we are the only animals in a savanna of darkness, the rustling sound we left behind returns. That bloody sound's back. Brad says wearisome. Are you sure it's not following us? It's probably just a curious animal, Brad. Yeah, that's what concerns me. Again, we listen out for the sound. And like before, the rustling appears to be moving around us. But the longer we listen, out of some fearful primal instinct, the sooner do we realize the sound following us through the brush is no longer alone. Reese, I think there's more than one of them. Just keep moving, Brad. They'll lose interest eventually. God, where's Mufasa when you need him? We now make our way down the dirt road at a faster pace, hoping to soon be far away from whatever is following us. But just as we think we've left the sounds behind, do they once again return? But this time, in more plentiful numbers. Bloody hell, there's more of them. Not only are there more of them, but the sounds of rustling are now heard from both sides of the dirt road. Brad, keep moving. The sounds are indeed now following us, and while they follow, we begin to hear even more sounds. Different sounds. The sounds of whining, whimpering, chirping, and even cackling. For God's sake, Reese! What are they? Just keep moving. They're probably more afraid of us. Yeah, I doubt that. The sounds continue to follow, and even flank ahead of us, all the while growing ever louder. The sounds of whining, whimpering, chirping, and cackling, becoming still louder and audibly more excited. It is now clear these animals are predatory, and regardless of whatever they want from us, Brad and I know we can't stay to find out. Screw this! Brad, run! Just leg it! Grabbing a handful of Brad's shirt, we hurl ourselves forward as fast as we can down the road, all while the whines, chirps, and cackles follow on our tails. I'm so tired and thirsty that my legs have to carry me on pure adrenaline. Although Brad now has the phone flashlight, I'm the one running ahead of him, hoping the dirt road is still beneath my feet. Reese! Wait! I hear Brad shouting a good few meters behind me, and I slow down ever so slightly to give him the chance to catch up. Reese, stop! Even with Brad now gaining up with me, he continues to yell from behind. But not because he wants me to wait for him, but because, for some reason, he wants me to stop. Stop. Reese! Finally, feeling my lungs give out, I pull the brakes on my legs, frightened into a mind of their own. The faint glow of Brad's flashlight slowly gains up with me, and while I try desperately to get my dry breath back, Brad shines the flashlight on the ground before me. Wah. What, Brad? Waiting breathless for Brad's response, he continues to swing the light around the dirt beneath our feet. The road! Where's the road? What? I cough up. Following the moving flashlight, I soon realize what the light reveals isn't the familiar dirt of tires, tracks, but twigs, branches, and brush. Where's the road, Brad? Why are you asking me? Taking the phone from Brad's hand, I search desperately for our only route back to civilization, only to see we're surrounded on all sides by nothing but untamed shrubbery. We need to head back the way we came. Are you mad? Brad yells. Those things are back there. We don't have a choice, Brad. Ready to drag Brad away with me to find the dirt road, the silence around us slowly fades away as the sound of rustling, whining, whimpering, chirping, and cackling returns to our ears. Oh shit. The variation of sounds only grows louder, and although distant only moments ago, they are now coming from all around us. Reese, what do we do? I don't know what to do. The animal sounds are too loud and ecstatic that I can't keep my train of thought. And while Brad and I move closer to one another, the sounds continue to circle around us. Until, lighting the barren wilderness around, The sounds are now accompanied by what must be dozens of small, bright lights. Matched into pairs, the lights flicker and move closer, making us understand they are in fact dozens of blinking eyes. Eyes belonging to a large pack of predatory animals. "Reese, what do we do?" Brad asks me again. "Just stand your ground," I say, having no idea what to do in this situation. If we run, they'll just chase after us. Okay. I could feel Brad's body trembling next to me, still surrounded by the blinking lights. The eyes growing in size only tell us they are moving closer, and although the continued whines, chirps, and cackles have now died down, they only give way to deep, gurgling growls and snarls, as though these creatures have suddenly turned into something else. Feeling as though they're going to charge at any moment, I scan around at the blinking, snarling lights, when suddenly I see an opening. Although the chances of survival are minimal, I know when they finally go in for the kill, I have to run as fast as I can through that opening, no matter what will come after. As the eyes continue to stalk ever closer, I now feel Brad grabbing onto me for the sheer life of him. Needing a clear and steady run through whatever remains of the gap, I pull and shove Brad until I was free of him, and then the snarls grew even more aggressive, almost now a roar, as the eyes finally charge full throttle at us. "Run!" I scream, either to Brad or just myself. Before the eyes and whatever else can reach us, I drop the flashlight and race through the closing gap. I can just hear Brad yelling my name amongst the snarls, and while I race forward, the many eyes only move away, in the direction of Brad behind me. "Reese!" I hear Brad continuously scream, until his screams of my name turn to screams of terror and anguish. "Reese! Reese!" Although the eyes of the creatures continue to race past me, leaving me be as I make my escape through the dark wilderness, I can still hear the snarls, the cackling and whining, before the sound of Brad's screams echo through the plains as they tear him apart. I know I am leaving my best friend to die, to be ripped apart and devoured. But if I don't continue running for my life, I know I'm going to soon join him. I keep running through the darkness for as long and far as my body can take me, endlessly tripping over shrubbery only to raise myself up and continue the escape until I'm far enough that the snarls and screams of my best friend can no longer be heard. I don't know if the predators will come for me next, whether they will pick up and follow my scent, or if Brad's body is enough to satisfy them. If the predators don't kill me in this dry, scorching wilderness, I am sure the dehydration will. I keep on running through the earliest hours of the next morning, and when I finally collapse from exhaustion, I find myself lying helpless on the side of some hill. If this is how I die, being burnt alive by the scorching sun, I am going to die a merciful death. Considering how I left my best friend to be eaten alive, it's a better death than I deserve. Feeling the skin of my own face, arms and legs burn and crackle, I feel surprisingly cold, and before the darkness has once again formed around me, the last thing I see is the swollen ball of fire in the middle of a cloudless, breezeless sky, accompanied only by the sound of a faint, distant hum. When I wake from the darkness, I'm surprised to find myself laying in a hospital bed. Blinking my blurry eyes through the bright room, I see a doctor and a policeman standing over me. After asking how I'm feeling, the policeman, hard to understand due to my condition and his strong Afrikaans accent, tells me I am very lucky to still be alive. Apparently, a passing plane had spotted my bright red rugby shirt upon the hill, and that's how I was rescued. Inquiring as to how I found myself in the middle of nowhere, I tell the policeman everything that happened. Our exploration of the tourist center, our tires being slashed, the man who gave us a lift only to leave us on the side of the road, and the unidentified predators that attacked us. Once the authorities knew of the story, they went looking around the Rourke's Drift area for Brad's body, as well as the man who left us for dead. Although they never found Brad's remains, they did identify shards of his bone fragments, scattered and half-buried within the grass plains. As for the unknown man, authorities were never able to find him. When they asked whatever residents who lived in the area, they all apparently said the same thing. There are no white men said to live in or around Rourke's Drift. based on my descriptions of the animals that attacked as well Brad's bone fragments. Zoologists said the predators must either have been spotted hyenas or African wild dogs. They could never determine which one. The whines and cackles I described them with perfectly matched spotted hyenas, as well as the fact that only Brad's bone fragments were found. Hyenas are supposed to be the only predators in Africa, except crocodiles that can break up bones and devour a whole corpse. But the chirps and yelping whimpers I also described the animals with, along with the teeth marks left on the bones, matched only with African wild dogs. But there's something else. The builders who went missing, all the way back when the tourist center was originally built, the remains that were found. They also appeared to be scavenged by spotted hyenas or African wild dogs. What I'm about to say next is the whole mysterious part of it. Apparently there are no populations of spotted hyenas or African wild dogs said to live around the Rorke's Drift area. So, how could these species, responsible for Brad's and the builders' deaths, have roamed around the area undetected for the past 20 years? Once the story of Brad's death became public news, many theories would be acquired over the next 15 years. More skeptical true crime fanatics say the local Rorke's Drift residents are responsible for the deaths. According to them, the locals abducted the builders and left their bodies to the scavengers. When me and Brad showed up on their land, they simply tried to do the same thing to us. As for the animals we encountered, they said I merely hallucinated them due to dehydration. Although they were wrong about that, they did have a very interesting motive for these residents. Apparently, the residents' motive for abducting the builders, and us, two British tourists, was because they didn't want tourism taking over their area and way of life, and so they did whatever means necessary to stop the opening of the tourist center. As for the more out there theories, paranormal communities online have created two different stories. One story is the animals that attacked us were really the spirits of dead Zulu warriors who died in the Rorke's Drift battle, and believing outsiders were the enemy invading their land, they formed into predatory animals and killed them. As for the man who left us on the roadside, these online users also say the locals abduct outsiders and leave them to the spirits as a form of appeasement. Others in the paranormal community say the locals are themselves shapeshifters, some sort of South African skinwalker, and they were the ones responsible for Brad's death. Apparently, this is why authorities couldn't decide what the animals were, because they had turned into both hyenas and wild dogs, which I guess could explain why there was evidence for both. If you were to ask me what I think, I honestly don't know what to tell you. All I really know is that my best friend is dead. The only question I ask myself is why I didn't die alongside him. Why did they kill him and not me? Were they really the spirits of Zulu warriors? And seeing a white man in their territory, they naturally went after him? But I was the one wearing a red shirt, the same color the British soldiers wore in the battle. Shouldn't it have been me they went after? Or maybe, like some animals, these predators really did see only black and white. It's a bit of painful irony, isn't it? I came to Rorke's Drift to prove to myself I was a proper Welshman, and it turned out my lack of Welshness is what potentially saved my life. But who knows? Maybe it was my 4-time great-grandfather's ghost that really saved me that night. I guess I do have my own theories after all. A group of paranormal researchers recently told me they were going to South Africa to explore the Rorke's Drift Tourist Center. They asked if I would do an interview for their documentary, and I told them all to go to hell, which is funny, because I also told them not to go to Rorke's Drift. Although I said I would never again return to that evil, godless place, that wasn't really true. I always go back there. I always hear Brad's screams. I hear the whines and cackles of the creatures as they tear my best friend apart. That place really is haunted, you know, because it haunts me every night. Story 2. I was 8. The first time I saw the man in the walls. It happened after my dad vanished. One day, he just didn't come home from work. My mom said he left us. Men do that sometimes, she whispered over the hum of the washing machine, though she never looked me in the eye when she said it. But I knew the truth, because I heard him scream the night before. It came from the basement. A single, strangled, yelled-in silence. When I told my mom, she smiled like her skin didn't fit right. You were dreaming, baby. Just a nightmare. But I wasn't. I was awake. And that was the first night the man in the walls whispered my name. His voice came from the space behind my bedroom outlet. Low, wet-sounding, like someone gargling in reverse. Gosh, that's my name, Ashton. But nobody called me that. Not even my parents. I was always just Ash. He knew the full name, the real one. The one written on my birth certificate, hidden in the drawer my mom always kept locked. I told my therapist, Dr. Linden. She said children invent monsters to cope with trauma. You're trying to make sense of a world that suddenly stopped making sense, she told me, voice calm. But the monsters aren't real, Ash. You are. That comforted me for a while, but the man in the walls didn't stop calling. And then my mom started locking the basement door. It's been 21 years since I last heard that voice. I'm 29 now. Quiet life, software job, apartment with bad insulation and an even worse view. No friends, unless you count my cat, Ashes. Irony, right? I thought I was normal. But trauma doesn't vanish. It curdles. It waits. And it waited for my mom to die. Her death was sudden. Heart attack in her sleep. Peaceful, they said. But when I went to clear out her things, I found something that shattered the illusion. A key. Cold black metal, left inside a manila envelope marked, for Ash, if he still remembers. I didn't. Not fully. Until I saw the address. Unit 139. Eden Storage. That name made my stomach flip. I'd drawn it once, in crayon, over and over on a wall in my childhood bedroom. My mom scrubbed it off and slapped me. Never write that word again, she hissed. Back then, I thought I was in trouble for drawing on the wall. I know better now. The storage unit was cold. The type of cold that didn't feel natural. That crawled into your skin and whispered things you didn't want to hear. Inside, just a single wooden box. Old, faintly humming, bound in something that looked like skin stretched too tight over plywood. I opened it. Inside, VHS tapes, and on top, a handwritten note. You lied. You said you forgot. Watch them. Remember who you were. The first tape started with static. Then my face. 8 years old. Pale. Eyes ringed in purple like I hadn't slept in weeks. Tell the camera what he said, baby. My mother's voice. Gentle. Shaking. He said, Daddy's not gone. He's inside me now. I looked at the camera. Deadpan. Then something flickered across the screen. Frame by frame, I swear to God me pupils changed shape. Elongate. Like a goat's. I stopped the tape. Vomited in the bathroom. I tried to rationalize. Old tape. Distortion. Tricks of light. Then Ashes started meowing at the closet door. Howling. The same closet that used to exist in my childhood home. The same closet I haven't opened in 2 years. I watched the second tape. It was footage of my dad, but not before he disappeared after. His beard was longer. Eyes sunken. He was in the basement, tied to a chair, crying. My mother stood beside him, holding a knife. Say it, she snapped. It's not a man, he sobbed. It's not human. You made me feed it. You made me dig it up. She slapped him. Hard. He's not it. He's your son. The tape cut there. I've watched 6 tapes so far. Each one more disturbing than the last. One showed a ritual. My birthday. 7th, I think. I'm wearing a crown. There's something carved into my arms. Everyone is smiling, including me. Another showed me in bed, speaking in a voice that wasn't mine. The vessel is ready. I stopped watching after that, but then the dreams started. Every night for the last 3 nights, I've woken up with dirt under my fingernails. Last night, I woke up holding a VHS tape that hadn't been there before. No label. I played it. It was a live feed. of me, in my room, sleeping, except I wasn't alone. Something stood over my bed, watching, breathing. The tape went black after 6 seconds. The number 666 flickered in the static before cutting off. This morning, Dr. Linden called me. I never told her what I'd found. She didn't say hello, just whispered, "You opened the box, didn't you?" I said yes. She started crying. "Ash, listen to me. You were never supposed to remember. You weren't born like this. They made you. Your parents were part of it. A group. An old one." "A cult?" I asked. "No," she whispered. "Worse. A bloodline. She told me my real father wasn't my father. That something older had been buried beneath my childhood home. That my mother had fed it, worshipped it, offered it her only child. Me. The rituals locked it inside you, Ash," she said. "The tapes, those, are the key to keeping it from waking." "But I stopped watching," I said. Silence. Then God help us all. The walls in my apartment are bleeding now. Not metaphorically. Literally. Dark red rivulets seeping from the baseboards. Ashes won't come near me anymore. He sits by the window and stares at the closet. Tonight, I finally opened it. Inside? The basement door from my childhood home. I don't have a basement. I've started sleepwalking, writing words on the walls in languages I don't know. One phrase keeps repeating. "I am almost born." And now, a voice is whispering to me again. Not from the walls, from inside my head. It sounds like me, but deeper, hungrier. It says, "You should have burned the box." I don't know how much longer I have. I've set up a camera in my room. I'm going to record tonight. I'll leave the feed running. If I post again, it means I survived. If I don't, check your closets. And for the love of God, don't open anything addressed to your childhood name. He remembers. And he's hungry. Story 3. It started slowly. I didn't realize it had begun until I was already in the middle of it. Like that old wives' tale about the frog in boiling water. I have a mentally and emotionally draining job. When I get home from work, I usually make myself a quick dinner and settle down in front of the television to eat and veg out before bed. It may not be the most productive way to spend my evenings, but that was okay with me. I'd never had great aspirations and only a few hobbies, which I mostly did on the weekend. The first time I noticed something had changed, the night started off the same as any other. I sat on the couch, a cold beer in hand, and turned on the television. Normally, I'm not much of a drinker. I tend to reserve things like that to evenings after a particularly hard day at work, or when I'm out with friends. This evening, the lone beer was much deserved. The programs on the television were easy to follow, the dialogue was accessible, and the plot lines comforting in their predictability. I couldn't tell you the names of the shows I watched, who was in them, or what they were about. They all melded together into a sort of white noise. The details brushed against my awareness before sliding off and fading away, only to be immediately forgotten. The next thing I knew, I was waking up on my couch, fingers wrapped loosely around the neck of my empty beer bottle. Disoriented, I sat up. The sounds of my popping and aching joints accompanied the faint sounds of the television still running on the other side of the room. Slowly, I came to realize what had happened. Like I said, I'm not much of a drinker. The combination of the rare beer and the exhaustion from last night's workday must have led me to fall asleep on the couch. I counted myself lucky that I still had time to shower before I had to be back at the office. I slogged through my shift that day, attributing my low energy to a bad night's sleep. Even after 2 cups of a coffee and an energy drink, I still felt like I was dragging my feet. By the time I got home, I was utterly spent. All I wanted to do was eat a quick dinner and hit the sack early. When I opened the front door, the first thing I noticed was the television was on. Okay, weird. But I figured I must have forgotten to turn it off before I left this morning. Before I could think better of it, I sunk into the couch, my whole body slumping into the plush upholstery. I towed off my shoes and pulled out my phone to order delivery. I was too tired to cook. Anyway, While I waited for my meal to arrive, I decided to watch some television. It was already on after all, so why not? I must have been more tired than I realized, though, because the next morning I found myself waking up on the couch. Again, takeout boxes littered the coffee table, and the television was still playing in the background. Frantic, I checked the time and saw that I was almost late for work. I jumped up, swearing. My whole body ached from a second night on the couch. I could tell the only thing propelling me forward was adrenaline. There was no time to clean up the takeout boxes or change my clothes. There was nothing left in the boxes that might attract bugs, so I didn't worry. I could clean them up when I got home later tonight. I made a point to turn off the television before I left, not wanting to let it run all day again. During my commute, I was forced to slow down. I take public transit and didn't have to focus on traffic, only listen for my stop. I fished around in my backpack for some gum. I didn't want to go into the office with my breath smelling like yesterday's takeout. In those moments, I realized that I couldn't remember when my dinner had arrived, or what I'd eaten. I couldn't remember how it tasted, and I definitely didn't remember falling asleep on the couch for the second night in a row. It seemed impossible that I could be so tired from one bad night's sleep that I would forget all that. I racked my brain, trying to think of an explanation, but I couldn't come up with anything more plausible. I told myself that after today, I'd at least have the weekend to clean and catch up on sleep. I'd be back on track in no time. I drudged through the workday, my limbs feeling heavy. My head, by contrast, felt like balloon-like, as if it were floating above my leaden body. I was in such a fog that I almost didn't clock out with enough time to catch my train home. When I got there, everything was exactly how I left it. I made myself clear the empty takeout boxes, relieved not to find any ant or flies, and sat down on the couch. What I needed was a little television to wind down and relax before bed. I turned the television on. The comforting blue light of the television was the only light in the room. I hadn't noticed it get too dark. What time was it anyway? Suddenly, the sound of birds singing outside caught my attention. I looked away from the screen to see dawn's light streaming through the blinds. I'd been awake, watching television, the whole night? How was that possible? It was pitch dark outside only seconds ago, and it felt as if I had barely sat down. I choked the whole thing up to fatigue. Maybe what I actually needed was a vacation. I got up, turned off the television, and changed out of my work clothes, which I only then realized I was still wearing. Despite the daylight, I needed to sleep. I had to close the blinds so my room would be dark enough for me to do so comfortably. I went into the kitchen to get a drink of water and had to pass through the living room to get there. Immediately, I noticed the television was on. I distinctly remembered turning it off, though. I wondered if there was a short in a wire somewhere causing it to turn back on. I decided to call a professional after I got some much-needed sleep. The remote sat amongst empty takeout containers that I could have sworn I'd thrown away. Were they new? Had I ordered another meal I'd forgotten eating? I reached for the remote, determined to shut the television off and get some damn rest. I pointed it at the television, but something about the program that was running piqued my interest. For the life of me, I couldn't tell you what it was. Not the name of the show, its content, who was in it, or even what channel it was on. Yet, I felt hypnotized. In that moment, and all the moments to follow, the television had captured my full attention. I stood there, remote in hand, and watched. I ordered more food so I wouldn't have to look away long enough to cook. More takeout boxes joined the ones already littering my coffee table and floor. I remember the food being satiating, but nothing else. I sat and watched and ate and watched and slept and watched and watched and watched. On Monday, my boss called. I answered the phone without looking away from the television screen, my fingers fumbling with the touch screen of my cell. I informed my boss I wouldn't be in that day. I was sick. My voice hardly sounded like my own. It was raspy from thirst and disuse. I can't remember the details of the conversation I had with my boss. I only realized the call had ended when I heard the dial tone after my boss had hung up. All my focus was in the television. The longer I watched, the harder it was to look away. The harder it was to look away, the longer I watched. My eyes burned with the need to blink, but when I tried, I couldn't. I felt the muscles around my eyes constrict as I fought to close my eyes, but they remained wide open. I couldn't blink. Panic thundered through my veins. The indistinct speech on the television was drowned out by the blood now rushing in my ears. What that fuck was going on? My vision blurred as my body forced tears into my eyes in an attempt to lubricate them. Despite my indistinct vision, the television held my gaze like a vice. Even as my eyes pulsed and burned, I continued to stare, unblinking, on the blurry rectangle of light. I told myself that it would be okay. Eventually, someone would come looking for me. They'd find me here, turn off the television, and whatever weirdness I'd suddenly found myself in would be over. I tracked the passage of time by the shifting light in my peripheral vision. Day turned into night, then day again. Tuesday! Around what I thought was midday, someone knocked on my door. I couldn't look away to answer it, but I tried to call out for help. Barely a sound made it past my lips. It was as though all the muscles in my throat had seized up, leaving me unable to do little more than breathe. My phone rang and rang, but I couldn't move to answer it. I had hoped that I could feel around for it, and do something to break me out of this hell I'd fallen into. But my limbs wouldn't obey me. They sat there, useless, lifeless, and unmoving. Eventually, my voicemail filled up, and shortly after, the battery died. I couldn't look away even to eat, or move to go to the bathroom. All I could do was watch, Washington TCH. Another day passed, maybe two. As little black dots filled my vision, it became harder to tell. Sometimes, it felt like I slept, or what passed for sleep now. It was more like disassociating. Nothing had changed from one moment to the next, yet I had the distinct impression that some time had passed. How much time I could never tell. Was it hours? Days? Weeks? Was that someone knocking on my door again? Or was it the television? Every time I thought I heard something going on outside, the television grew louder, yet no more distinct. I'm not ashamed to say that. If I could have, I would have cried. By this point, though, it seemed like my body had stopped producing tears. My eyes were like two burning coals, radiating pain through my head and face. And yet, I continued watching the damn television like nothing was wrong, like I was enjoying another relaxing evening after work. How long had I been like this? Why wasn't anyone coming for me? I had friends, didn't I? Where were they when I needed them most? I tried to recollect their names and faces, ready to give them an earful when I finally broke free, and couldn't. I couldn't remember a single person who I would consider a real friend. They were co-workers or acquaintances at best. I didn't have any family in town either, but surely they'd call someone to check on me if they didn't hear from me, right? They didn't. What finally saved me was a neighbor. They complained to the superintendent of my television being too loud for days on end, and a foul smell coming from my apartment. They thought I'd died. When the police and EMTs found me, I was all but blind. My own refuse had fused me to my couch. All around me was a sea of takeout boxes and half-eaten, rotting food. Despite this, I was severely malnourished. My skin had become paper thin, and my hair and teeth had begun falling out. I only know most of this because of what I heard the doctors say during my treatment. They said I'd suffered a mental break and diagnosed me with extreme burnout and depression. They placed me in a ward where I could recover with the help of a lot of medication and treatments to my eyes. They told me I'd all but lost them from extreme ocular dehydration. Ultimately, the ward isn't so bad. I get to eat, sleep, and at least I'm not alone. The best part is there's a television in the day area. Story 4. She'd been scrubbing for hours, the skin on her hands raw and red from pushing the brush back and forth. The stain, however, wasn't going anywhere. Elizabeth had no idea where it had come from. She prided herself on keeping a clean house and was quick to remove anything she deemed dirty. Spillages were cleaned before they could touch the surface they hurtled towards, and spiders actively stayed away from the house, not wanting to end up as 8 legs twitching on a tissue. Although she didn't have many visitors, she maintained that it was always good to be prepared, not wanting to be caught short with an unclean or messy house, which is why Elizabeth had been horrified to find the small, black, penny-sized spot on her red kitchen floor tiles that morning. Upon inspection, she had been surprised to see that edges of its circle were crisp. There were no splatter marks to indicate that it had been dropped or smudges to suggest it had been smeared. The stain was so black it didn't reflect any light in the kitchen, and when she looked, she could see that it wasn't shiny. It was matte. The stain was peculiar and very annoying. When she touched it with her finger, no residue came off, and it didn't smell. If anything, it had a strange absence of smell. She spent the morning using every cleaning product she owned, but the stain wouldn't budge. Her home remedies were depleted. She had used her supply of vinegar, baking soda, and lemons until she ran out, and was forced to move on to the strong chemicals that crept up her nose and burned the back of her throat as she scrubbed. When she sat back to wipe sweat off her brow, the spot was still there, looking exactly the same as it had that morning. As her knees ached and her palms were bruised from pushing, she knew it was time to stop for the day. She stood slowly, ignoring the pain in her back as it cracked, and made herself a mug of mint tea. She settled down in her sitting room and thumbed through the papers passed down by her grandmother and mother, a folder full of tips and tricks for cleaning and life that she had always treasured. Elizabeth hoped that maybe within this folder there would be a page that she had somehow miraculously missed relating to small black stains on kitchen floors. But unfortunately, it was full of the pages she had read and reread 100 times before. It was time for a last resort. She pulled her overnight stain remover out of the cupboard and sprayed the spot liberally, watching as the liquid fizzed and bubbled over the black. She coughed, trying not to inhale the disgusting sulfur smell. Elizabeth reheated leftovers on the stove and ate quickly, trying not to look at the spot, before taking herself up to bed. The next morning, she practically skipped down the stairs in anticipation, desperate to see the results of her overnight cleaner. She imagined the black being cracked, small separate pieces of residue that could be neatly wiped up and forgotten about. However, when she got there, she was shocked to find that the spot was now the size of a tennis ball, and that there was no trace of the stain remover that would usually leave a white, chalky residue. She was baffled. It didn't make sense. That stain remover had always worked, and yet somehow, the stain had grown overnight. Elizabeth had read an article years ago about mold and how devastating it could be. An entire family had been killed by rice that was left out at room temperature. Spores had gotten into the dish and poisoned the lot of them. She shuddered. Her house had always been so clean. She had worked hard to make sure it was perfect. But what if a spore had flown in through the window and settled on her floor? She rushed to the bookcase and flipped through any and every book she had that mentioned mold. Her collection of books was vast, and yet she found nothing that looked or sounded like the spot in her kitchen. The strangest thing about the stain was that it didn't look organic. It looked as if someone had placed it there and walked away. Even though her suspicions of mold couldn't be confirmed, Elizabeth opened the kitchen window to let some fresh air in, praying that it wasn't read as an open invitation to other spores in the area. She took 4 cans of sugar-free baked beans from her cupboard and carefully covered the spot with cling film, placing the tins around the edge to hold it down, noticing that as she did, the clear plastic dipped, almost as if it was being sucked down. Elizabeth put her head against the kitchen floor to look at the stain side on, and saw that it was, in fact, dipping. This was worse than she thought. The mold was eating through her tiles. She finished quarantining the area and left the room, pulling the door firmly shut behind her and going upstairs to shower. Elizabeth had a fitful sleep that night. She dreamt that she touched the spot, and as she did, blackness crept up her fingers and hand, consuming her arm and spreading like a poison over her collarbones. It dripped down her back agonizingly, slowly. Great globs of black, cold and squirming, feeding off of her skin, before moving up her neck and trickling towards her face. She woke with a start and turned on her bedside lamp. looking at her hands in the pale yellow glow of the room and breathing a sigh of relief when she saw the same wrinkled, liver-spotted skin she was used to, hands that reminded her of her mother's. The next morning, she was hesitant to go downstairs. Her dream had shaken her, but she was forced to venture to the kitchen, unable to ignore her hunger. As she entered, she told herself to ignore the spot completely. Just eat and leave. She chewed her breakfast quickly and managed to steadfastly ignore the stain. She was pleased with herself, but as she got up to leave the room, her eyes moved involuntarily and fixed on the thing she had been avoiding. The cling film and beans had vanished, and the spot was now the size reminiscent of a small well. She felt pulled towards it, like it was drawing her in. It had morphed into a hole, a deep black hole in her kitchen floor. Instinctively, she grabbed a wooden spoon and grasped it tightly over the edge of the hole, thinking it must be some sort of optical illusion and that the spoon would bounce off the tiles. She leant forward, careful not to let her feet get too close, and released her grip. To her horror, the spoon went tumbling down until it was completely consumed by the darkness. Elizabeth listened for the sound of it hitting the bottom, her arms still poised from the release, but heard nothing. There was no bounce or echo or crash, just a long and eerie silence. She exhaled a long breath she didn't know she was holding and lowered her aching arm. Blinking, she saw that the room was much darker than it had been. She was baffled to see the moon through the window, hanging above her. Minutes before, it had been late morning, but when she looked at her watch, it was 9 o'clock at night. It made no sense. Elizabeth rubbed her temples and glared at the hole. She decided that to see what was happening once and for all, she had to watch it overnight. She laid a clean tablecloth on her kitchen table before rolling out her duvet on top for padding. The wood would not be forgiving to her bones. She brewed the strongest cup of coffee she could to ensure that she wouldn't fall asleep. Carefully hoisting herself up onto the table with the aid of a chair, she clutched her coffee and pillow and covered herself with a blanket, bracing herself for the night ahead. Drinking coffee at night would usually leave Elizabeth feeling jittery and wide awake, but for some reason, maybe the stress of the last few days, it wasn't having its usual effect. She fought sleep for as long as she could, but her eyelids felt heavy, and eventually she let the wave of sleep she was fighting wash over her. Elizabeth stirred to the soothing sound of her mother's voice calling her name. It was the sound of being called back inside for dinner after playing outside in sticky summer heat all day. She could feel the grass under the soles of her feet, the tree branches brushing over her arms as she darted between them to get home. The thin fabric of her dress billowed behind her, lilac in her peripheral vision. Her hair was long and loose, lifting to the wind as she hopped the stile and ran over the short field to her house. She paused at the gate. She could still hear her mother, could smell the beef stew simmering on the stove as it wafted through the window, but something was wrong. Elizabeth ached to follow the sound inside the familiar cottage, to run into her mother's arms for a long hug and laugh as she was tutted at for getting her dress dirty, but she couldn't. She knew she couldn't because her mother had been dead for over 30 years. Elizabeth opened her eyes properly and found herself not on the kitchen table, but instead standing beside the hole, her toes curled over the edge. Her arms flailed as she caught her balance and stepped backwards at lightning speed away from the hole, although now a more accurate word would be chasm. It was so large there was hardly any space around it, and its sides were touching the bottom of her cabinets. She looked at the clock and saw that it was gone 3 in the morning. She needed to get away from it, away from the house. She couldn't go through the front door. That meant going near the hole, and there was a risk of getting stuck, of time passing without her knowing. She ran out of the kitchen, slamming the door behind her and moving frantically to the living room. She opened a window and climbed out, her nightdress catching on a nail by the latch and ripping the soft fabric. Elizabeth didn't care. All she cared about was getting away from the chasm. For the first time in decades, she ran. She ran until her legs burned and her lungs felt like they would explode, until her whole body felt numb from the cold morning air rushing past her. She ran so fast she didn't feel like her legs were her own, that they might take off without the rest of her. Elizabeth didn't know where she was going, just that she had to keep moving. She was running and running, and as she ran, Elizabeth began to taste the sweet tang of orange juice on her tongue. She slowed and swallowed thickly, the taste becoming stronger as she did. She looked down and saw that the white nightdress she was wearing was now thin and lilac, stained with moss and mud and grass from her youth. The skin on her hands was smooth, and her mother was calling her home. Elizabeth opened her eyes and found herself standing at the edge of the chasm in her kitchen once again, her mother's sing-song voice echoing from deep in the hole, calling to her. She looked past her wrinkled, liver-spotted hands and felt no fear, just the ache to be at home in that cottage. She took a breath and stepped forward into the darkness. Story 5. Part 1, I'm just a dumb college kid. I've heard that so many times. Older folks love to dismiss my lack of experience. I'm just a dumb college kid. Normally I'd agree. Most of my classmates fit the bill pretty well. Between the kids that needed 4 more years before the real world and the trust fund kids that have everything provided, maybe we are just dumb college kids. Most dumb college kids don't have to bury their mom twice. As far back as I can remember, she loved stories. My mom explained that her name was Old World. Her mom gave it to her to remember the old country. My great-great-grandmother was an immigrant, but that was no reason to lose our heritage. She was proud of the name Molione and what it meant. She said it came from royalty. I guess that's why she spent so much time reading me the epics and stories of gods and heroes. It was great to go to sleep to. My dreams filled with visions of mystical beings and man becoming more. I assume that's what decided my degree path. I made sure my grades were always great. I took the dual credit classes. I was ready to go. When the Dartmouth letter came in the mail, I was so excited I couldn't open it. My mom did the honors and shared the news with me. We celebrated all night with the undertone that I would be moving 1,400 miles to a new place and be completely alone for the first time in my life. The next day I realized how true that would be. My mom didn't get up to send me off to school. She had made a big stink about seeing me every morning of my senior year, but I assumed she was just overtired. When I got home, she and my dad were gone. I found a note on the table. Had to go to the doctor. Dinner is in the fridge. We'll call as soon as we can. I didn't hear anything from them that night. My pacing wore paths in the carpet that could only be accented by a bathrobe, rolling pin, and lipstick on the collar. The next morning, the house was empty. I've never heard it so quiet. The hum of the air conditioner and the sink in the kitchen that never fully shuts off. I thought about waking up my mom before I realized that no one would be in there. I tried to call my dad, but no answer. That day I couldn't focus, so for the first time I skipped. Third period wasn't anything important, so they wouldn't miss me for an hour or so. I snuck out the back door with the smokers and headed to the hospital. I gave her name to the front desk and they sent me to oncology. I met my parents in the hallway. We exchanged hugs and some hushed conversation. By the time we sat down with the doctor, it all became a blur. He kept saying words like terminal and quality of life. I just shut down. Losing a grandparent is hard enough as a child. This was my mom. The next 3 months were rough. She refused treatment because of the side effects, and instead we had a nurse move in to keep her comfortable. Even then, she was a fighter. The doctor said that a disease like hers normally takes the afflicted within a month. She pulled out 3. I felt like I couldn't Google enough. There are only so many search results that come from brain cancer and how to fix glioblastoma. This was supposed to be my last summer as a kid. Instead, I watched my mom waste away and my dad fall deeper and deeper into a bottle. The day we lost her almost felt like a relief. I feel bad saying that, but it was. I held her hand as she passed and felt everything leave her. We had talked so much about heaven and what is waiting for her. When I knew she was gone, I was almost happy for her. She was in so much pain. So were we. But it wasn't about us. It was about her. My dad was oblivious to anything happening outside of his short glass, so everything fell on me. 18 years old and talking to a funeral director. I paused, packing my things for college to pick out the outfit my mom would be buried in. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. It wasn't fair. Part 2. As my plane touched down, I couldn't help but feel lost. Being so far away from home isn't new. We'd taken plenty of vacations, but now I was alone. It was just me, my duffel bag of necessities, and the future. I collected my things from the baggage claim and waited for my Uber. Pulling onto campus reinforced my feelings. So many parents moving their kids in. Hugs, tears, and annoyed dads trying to park. I made my way up to Allen House and found my hall. The room was open. My roommate was already moving in, and his parents welcomed me with a boisterous hug. "We're so happy to meet you. You and Charles will be best friends forever. Let's get a picture of you two." We stood together on our respective sides, his full of pictures, posters, a well-made bed, the essentials for dorm life, and mine barren. They took the picture, promised to send it, and said their goodbyes. I unpacked my bag and made my bed. Once we were alone, Charles tried to be chatty. I felt bad but wasn't in the mood. I brushed off everything he said with one-word answers. I never was able to connect with the business types. Hopefully he'll pledge out, and then it'll be quiet. Orientation was later that night. We met up with our RA and got a schedule of events. Movie nights, game nights, mandatory lectures. It all felt so forced. I think to call my dad, but I know his phone is disconnected. You can get a lot of drinks for the price of a phone bill. That's all he seemed to care about those days. I'm not even sure he knew I left. I don't think anyone knew. I hadn't spoken to my friends since the funeral. So many times I was told to reach out, but it's not their problem. Why would I bother them with my personal hell? They didn't lose anyone. They don't understand. I tuned out Charles talking excitedly about his schedule and his plans to try for some sleep. I silently bounced with every stifled sob. If he noticed, he didn't make it known. I'm just a college kid. I make sure that I throw myself into my classes. It's hard to be sad and lonely when you're stressed and busy. Charles is none the wiser. It was almost comforting to sit in my room next to him, stressing over the business classes. I'd love to have his class load, but classics feels right. Not only was my childhood full of epics and tragedies, but it helped me feel connected to her. When I sat in my entry-level Latin, I almost feel like she's there learning with me. I know it'll never get better, but hopefully it gets easier. Freshman year comes and goes. I got a job in town and took a couple of nonsense classes to keep my room for the summer. Being alone with people my age beats sitting at home watching my dad sink. I hadn't so much as gotten a text from him the whole year. Part of me hopes he's all right. Part of me has written him off. Being a sandwich artist fills the holes made by the lack of classes. Nothing fills the emptiness at night. When I lay down at night, the world closes. I can ignore everything all day long. When it's just me and my thoughts, they only get louder. Sometimes, I wish they would just stop. Some nights I would do anything to get away from the voices. NyQuil doesn't work anymore and I refuse to drink. My list of options is only getting shorter, but I won't go that far. I promised my mom I would get my degree. I just have to hang in a couple more years, and then I can figure it out. For now, I'm just a college kid. Sophomore year starts just like the one before. Studying, testing, and learning to tune out a new roommate. I never did like Chuck, but at least I knew what he was about. I don't even remember the new guy's name. Why bother? Any relationship would be superficial at best. The last thing I wanted to do was lose someone else. Loneliness can be oddly comforting. In my Wednesday class on the archaic period, I found myself tuning out the professor. Maybe this isn't for me. Maybe college is a fever dream. Maybe I shouldn't waste my time on making sure that I... Dude, get on with it. The guy next to me interrupts my spiral. What? We're here for the classics. At least start with the classical period. Am I right? Yeah, I guess. Jordan. He extends his hand. I meet the gesture and give him my name. We share hushed conversation for the rest of the hour. Well, he talks, and I barely respond. When the class is over, we meet up outside the room. Want to grab a bite and exchange notes? I follow him to his dorm and I realize we're approaching my door. 3 more and he swipes his keycard. This is me. Make yourself comfortable. My roommate won't be home until the bars close. I settled into the desk chair as he jumps onto his lofted bed. So where you from? Iowa. Cool. Cool. He fades out, taking the unintended hint that conversation wasn't my goal. What about you? He seemed shocked. We've only known each other for a couple of hours, but I've yet to initiate. Almost giddy, he starts in. Well, I was born in Texas, but my dad moved us around a lot. That's the military life. Japan, Alabama, California. If you can name it, I've probably been. Never stayed too long anywhere, and I'm not going to lie. I stopped listening. I noticed that the never-ending dread of facing tomorrow wasn't at the forefront anymore. I was actually enjoying sitting across from Jordan. I snap back into focus and we talk for hours. We walk to the dining hall and get dinner together. We sat and ate and then resumed talking and joking. Eventually I said my goodbyes and walked back down the hall. I laid down and went straight to sleep. Maybe things aren't all bad. Maybe I am just a college kid. That Christmas I went home with Jordan. Eggnog, ugly sweaters, family. I hadn't felt anything like that in a while. Especially when we all sat around the tree and his mom handed me a box with my name. I broke down in tears. For the first time since that day at the hospital, I felt loved. I'm part of a family. Jordan's mom found me in the other room and held me. I sobbed violently and she joined me. I wiped my eyes, thanked her, and rejoined the group. For the rest of the break, we celebrated and enjoyed each other's company. Jordan and I returned to the dorms. My roommate moved out, so we talked to student housing, and now I lived with Jordan. We decorated the room together. That place felt like a home now. Pictures of my mom everywhere. Posters from Jordan's favorite movies. We were just college kids. Part 3. As the winter semester came to a close, all of the daddy's money kids started boasting about their plans for spring break. All of these dumb college kids were heading to Panama City, Galveston Island, and other places with loose women and looser liquor laws. To my disappointment, Jordan was one of them. One night I overheard a conversation between him and his parents discussing passports and flight plans. To avoid the embarrassment of not being able to afford the trip across town, let alone actual travel, I didn't mention it. As he crowed about and packed for his far-off adventures, I sunk back into the familiar corner of my mind where I will once again be alone. That Friday, I came back to the room to find Jordan's bedmate, his closet empty, and an envelope on my bed. Upon further inspection, I found a note and the largest gift I've ever received. He explained that his mom had informed him that not everyone has a passport, so he canceled his trip. Canceled isn't the right word, more postponed. The note went on to explain how to fill out the attached passport application, where to get pictures, cash for the mailing, and a plane ticket to Greece for that summer. I couldn't help myself. I broke down. Whether he knew or not, Jordan was allowing me to gain the kind of connection and closure most only dream about. When I dehydrated myself, I gave him a call. What followed was hours of tears and thanks and conversation with my new extended family. That summer, Jordan and I caught an Uber to the airport. Not every dumb college kid gets to spend their first adult trip in Europe, but I guess I just got lucky. We checked into the hotel and walked the sights. The first day we decided to keep it educational. We visited the Parthenon, a couple of museums, the tourist stuff. Afterwards, we let ourselves relax. Drinks were plentiful. The people of Greece are very hospitable. I can't keep track of how many places we visited and how many drinks we had. Turns out my dad was onto something. I always looked down on him for the solutions he turned to, but all of my problems melted away. I had 3 full days with no worries, no anxiety, and best of all, no problems. I was truly a college kid. Day 4, we went to a beachfront bar. The wine, the women, I was in heaven. Turns out, the American accent has the same effect over here that the English has back home. By the time that I passed out on the beach, I had a beautiful woman on either side of me and I'd lost track of Jordan. I was finally happy. The thing you don't learn on the lakeside beaches in Iowa is that the ocean has a tide. A great way to figure that out is to get woken up by the water washing over your face. I jumped up to escape the frigid alarm, and in my stupor wound up even deeper when the tide came back. I lost my footing and felt myself succumb to the darkness of the waves. What feels like hours later, I was awake. Things were dark. I wasn't cold. I was heavy. A light appears before me. A booming voice from the deeps welcomes me by name. Before I can say anything, it begins recounting my life. Childhood, losing my mom, losing my dad, everything. It asks me if I have anything to say on my behalf. When I open my mouth, all I can do is taste the salt. I can't scream. I can't breathe. I don't know if I hadn't noticed, but suddenly I realized I can't breathe. I attempted to reach for the oxygen at the surface but couldn't move. I began twisting and turning, fighting to survive. I had never considered what was now my greatest fear: drowning. The voice calms me with an unseen touch. It is not yet your time. Your final task awaits you. Then I'm awake. This time the world was bright. Blinding lights, hurried voices, mechanical beeps and noises. I can't scream or speak, but at least I could breathe. I'm back out. When I finally wake up for good, Jordan is at my bedside. He tried to explain what happened, but I'm hit with the anxiety of the hospital. I haven't been to one since my mom. The place feels almost alien. I caught something about drowning and being clinically dead. Then the doctor walked in. Thankfully, he spoke English. He told me how lucky I am and that one of the young ladies found me washed up on the beach. Something about getting pulled out, sucking in water. I don't really know. The MRI image in his hand stole my focus. There was a dark spot, almost the exact same size and shape of the one that stole my childhood. Part 4. The next couple of months were a blur. Doctors, MRIs, blood tests, everything said the same thing. Glioblastoma. We started the chemos and the surgeries, but nothing helped. Everything they removed came right back. Every failed attempt comes with the half-hearted reassurance. You're a young college kid. You should be able to fight this. After a while, I gave up. Nothing seemed to help and the headaches just got worse. The chemo left me sick and useless. I had to pause my studies. Constant vomit and weakness is not conducive to absorbing information. Maybe they were showing me pity, but the school told me to take as long as I needed, and they would keep everything in place for me. Thanks to distance learning, I was able to do what I could in my moments of strength. The doctors gave me something for the nausea, but nothing helped the migraines. The blinding lights, every sound bursted my eardrums. I'd more than once considered opening a hole to relieve the pressure. Turns out it is incredibly difficult to schedule a Remington haircut when you can't make it to the store without passing out on the stairs. After a conversation with my doctor, we decided to give up. Monthly follow-ups to track progress and prayer is about all I have the strength for. I continued like this for a couple of months when the doctor came in with a new result. On the X-ray, he pointed out a weirdly squared shape. Straight lines are a symbol that something is not natural, and there were 4 of them. We planned an exploratory surgery for 2 months, and I went on my way. That night I got hit with another migraine. When I pressed my temples, I'd swear I felt something move. Where my skull usually is hard and unforgiving, my finger traveled just far enough to be noticeable. With all of the sleep aids I was on those days, hallucinations were the least of my worries. I drifted into the warm blanket of hydroxyzine, and my worries were now for tomorrow. I wake up and the headache returns with a fervor. I stumbled to the bathroom and look in the mirror to try and collect myself. When my eyes focused, I couldn't see my ear. The shock of being so different from every morning takes me out of the pain. I turned slightly, and a lump in my temple is obscuring my ear. Over the next couple of days, I tried my best to track the lump. Every day, it got bigger. My head started to get heavy. I couldn't lift my head off the pillow without using my hands to help. I thought the tumor was getting exponentially larger until I noticed the biggest change yet. I washed my face and noticed when my hand ran into my hair. No, wait, that's not my hair. It's too low. I open my eyes and see that the lump now has hair. Not regular hair, not ear hair. The hair was thin and plastered to it. I couldn't get a grip to pull it or even comb it. Not only was I counting my days, but now I'm a freak. I started wearing a keffiyeh to hide the growth. I drew some eyes when I'd go in public, but I could only imagine what they would do if they saw what I was growing. After a couple days of the same, it all seemed to go away. If not for the growth, I could almost convince myself that nothing was wrong. The headaches stayed regular, but those I could manage with the wonders of Western medicine. I spoke with my professors, who had been extremely understanding, and I returned to class. After dodging the fake sympathy of my classmates, I went back to my dorm and Jordan was waiting for me with open arms. We got all caught up and talked for hours like we had been best friends for years. I went to bed realizing that I may be able to go back to being a college kid. It almost makes me feel worse for what I put Jordan through. That night, I woke up to a new sensation. I could feel my brain moving. Most people never imagine what their skin feels like. If you stop to think about it, it's warm and stable. Turns out your brain is in the same vein. I can't explain it, but I knew the entire mass of gray matter was being crushed, almost to move out of the way. After the pain wave subsided, I realized my nose was running. Grabbing a tissue, it was clear fluid. Out of the ear, clear fluid is usually spinal. Out of the nose, it could be anything. All of a sudden, my eyes started to compress. I could feel the pressure of leftover meatloaf pushing against cling wrap as I began to cry from the pain. This woke up Jordan. I'll never forget the look of horror. He helped me to the bathroom and I could see that the growth in my temple was now encompassing my eye. I reached up to test for sensitivity when I felt a pop. Just as easily as pulling a cap from a pen, my eye was now in my hand. The only thing keeping it connected was the optical nerve. Jordan screamed. I screamed. Then came the pain. Before I could realize what happened, my head was in a vice. My skull was shrinking. If you had told me that my brain was leaking out of every pore in my head, I would have believed you. I swear I could feel my soft spot reopening as the seams of my cranium broke apart. After a couple of seconds, it subsided. I caught my breath and looked down to my now clenched fist. As I opened my fingers, the gelatinous remains of my right eye start to flow between my fingers. I might have freaked out if not for the second wave of pressure. Jordan helped me to my bed, and this continued for about an hour. I'd regain my breath, start to think I was better, then the vice would get tighter. I could swear my brain was going to come out of my newest orifice. Every time it would get closer to popping. I was never a religious man, but I prayed to everyone I could think to just make the pain go away. Eventually, the pressure got the best of me and I felt something come out. Jordan's audible shock was drowned out by the realization that something new was dangling from my face. I reached beside me and picked up a fully formed human baby. It was a girl. Where my optic nerve had once attached my eyeball was now an umbilical cord. I cut it and had a wave of relief wash over me. The pain was gone. I could breathe. I could stand. But then the cry started. She was beautiful. I had never had the time to picture being a parent, but I guess this would make me a dad. I looked into her big brown eyes and was hit with a wave of recognition. I knew those eyes. I knew that nose. My forehead was kissed by those lips when I had the flu. It was unmistakable. While Jordan ran out of the room, understandably shaken, I was coming to grips with what had just happened. I went to the bathroom to clean up and took her with me. While she laid on the bathroom floor, I was overtaken with emotion. What the hell was I going to do? I can't explain this to anyone. Poor Jordan was here, and I doubt he'd understood what happened. His weak stomach kept away prying eyes, and I don't think I fully did either. I looked from the sweet baby on the floor, giving me that look she always did when I gave her the handmade cards for her birthday, to the open toilet bowl behind me. Even as a newborn, she was a fighter. Maybe I was weakened by my experience. Maybe it was my humanity. But as the little form struggled to reach oxygen, I cried. I was just a dumb college kid. I wasn't ready to be a dad. Hell, I could barely dig a hole big enough for the shoebox. The doctor bought that I had an unfortunate incident during a frat party and gave me an eye patch with orders to return for a prosthetic. My oncologist gave me a clean bill of health and called it a miracle. That Monday, I returned to class and passed my finals the following week. I got a second chance at being a college kid. But every time I close my eye to sleep, I can't help but see the note I put in the box. I love you. I always have. I always will. Until we meet again. They say the tiniest coffins are the heaviest, but no child should have to raise their parents. Story 6. Alone, sitting there leaning up against a brick wall, not really coming to a full realization as to where I was at the moment. I sat there looking out into a street, not recognizing anything around me, as I could feel the cold rain falling on me. with every drop feeling just as cold as the next, looking out into a street in which I had traveled many times before, but now remembering nothing about it, sitting there as the cars would pass by, going to where the road was taking them, as voice then said to me, "No place to go, no one knows you, for alone you will forever be." Looking around, as people would walk by looking at me with a silent stare, leaving me to wonder who had just said that to me, just as a man then walked by me saying to me, "Remember, this is what you asked for." As I then shouted out saying, "What do you mean that I asked for this? Tell me." Not knowing who I was, or the people as they passed by me, who they were, without one of them not willing or taking the time to even say a word to me. Probably wondering the same thing that I was wondering, who was I? Just as another person then walked by me saying to me, "Who are you? Where are you?" Just as a feeling of shock and horror that would soon follow, as I screamed out shouting, "Who I am, I, and where am I?" Sitting there in the cold rain, feeling it getting colder and colder as it fell down on me. I could hear voices mixed in the rain as it fell on me, saying to me, "Alone you shall forever be," as fear was slowly creeping all around me. For something deep in me just did not feel right to me. For as I was just still waking up from the realization of what was happening, who was I? Where was I? As a voice then said to me, "Who are you?" With me not knowing where the voice came from, looking around, seeing people pass by me, not of them giving a care in the world about me. As the same voice then said again to me, "What did you do?" With me screaming aloud, "What did I do? Why am I here? And who am I?" Screaming out, as man walking by just looked at me saying, "Well, who are you?" Laughing as he then walked on, just as the voice then once again said to me, "They will care for you. They will not know you, for this is what you asked for." With me screaming out once again, "What did I ask for? Please tell me what I asked for, and who and where am I?" As the voice once again said to me, "You are where you were, and what you asked for was pain." With me screaming out, "Why would I ask for pain? Please tell me," wanting to keep screaming out. But everything in me was still very much dark, sitting there alone, sitting there cold and wet, thinking to myself, why won't anyone help me? Please tell me. Why won't anyone even help me? Unable to remember anything at all. As the feeling of loneliness began to set in, the feeling of being alone, and alone I was. The feeling being abandoned, for as the people would walk by a stranger, I was to them as they were strangers to me, wondering to myself, how did I get here? What has happened to me? Why won't anyone help me? As fear and shock was slowly beginning to take place along with the feeling of being lost. As I sat there, looking down at my rain-soaked clothes, or at least what I had on, which was only a t-shirt and bed pants, not to mention that I had no shoes or socks on, with no indication of where I was or where I came from, only knowing that I was here, sitting in the rain looking at people as they passed by me, with no one stopping to even say a word to me, with nobody really showing that they even cared, except one, a man who approached me asking me, "What have we here? Little girl, what are you doing out here, sitting out here in the rain in your pajamas?" Looking into his eyes with fear, not knowing at the time that fear was looking back at me. The only thing I could say was, "I don't know where I am or do I remember anything," placing his hands on my shoulder, assuring me that he would try his best to help me out. As fear just came all over me, as I could hear a voice come from within him saying, "Pain," with him then telling me that his name was Azazel, as I could hear a voice in my head saying to me, "Pain, you will forever know," as he then said to me that he was the town's local sheriff and that he would try to help me. Making my way slowly up to my feet as I got up to follow the sheriff, I noticed a guy standing across the street from me, just standing there staring at me, as the voice once again said to me, "Alone you are, pain you shall know, forevermore, pain so unbearable. You will wish that you were dead, the pain that they will, and shall bring upon you." Just an eerie feeling suddenly coming over me, trying my best to just shrug it off. But no matter what I'd done, the feeling kept residing within me. thinking much about it at the moment. As we walked down the street to the police station setting down with me, he then proceeded to ask me to try to remember what I could. But before I could say anything at all, I found myself looking straight into a fogged-up window. Seeing a word begin to appear. As it came into focus, it read, "Alone." As more words then started to appear, saying, "Alone, you shall forever be knowing nothing but pain." Seeing that the same man from earlier now was standing out from the window, just standing there staring at me. Not moving, as he just stood there with a dead stare, staring at me, knowing what was coming, knowing the pain that was coming to me. As the feeling of fear came rushing over me, standing up, looking to the sheriff, screaming to him, "I just want to go home. Please, I just want to go home." A home I didn't remember for everything was gone to me, for I was alone, having tears coming down my face. Just as the sheriff said to me, "Look, I am going to help you, but for now you need to calm down," placing his hand on my hand, saying to me, "For now, let's get you something to eat, and then we will go from there. Till then, there is a bathroom over there if need." Making my way into the bathroom as the light was flickering above me, standing there looking into the mirror, as the feeling of fear would come over me, as the feeling of dread was all around me, the feeling of I wasn't alone, standing in there looking slowly around me, looking into the mirror. For as I stood there looking into the mirror, I saw a young girl with long blonde hair with blue eyes, looking to be a girl around 30 years of age, standing there looking at me. Just as the girl then said to me, "Forever you are me, for you asked for me." Laughing as I then ran out of the bathroom screaming, running out the police station, running into the pouring rain, looking in every direction. Just as the sheriff ran out and grabbed me by my shoulders with me yelling, "I just want to go home. I just want to go home." Falling to my knees just as the sheriff then placed his hands on my shoulder, saying to me, "Look, I am going to do my best to help you, but you have to help me by staying calm," reassuring me, "Everything is going to be all right. Everything is going to be all right." As I stood up looking to the sheriff with tears in my eyes, saying to him, "Thank you." As the sheriff then looked to me saying, "Now let's go and get you something to eat and get you dry and out of this rain here. There is a good diner across the street in front of us." Walking across the street, I then noticed the guy that watching me from earlier was now finally gone. Walking in as I then looked around, as no one inside seemed familiar to me, unlike the sheriff as he greeted almost everyone in the place. But then I found myself standing there in front of a blonde-haired girl. Being her? Chloe Grace Moretz. Standing there in a grayish black-like jacket and grayish pants, with something deep down in my mind was now saying to me, "Forever you shall know her, knowing pain." But as I then walked away from her, giving her a quick glance, it hit right then, but later. The pain really began to set in. It's a pain that you cannot describe it. But knowing that you had a feeling that you had written something on her, it's not a like pain that you want the person. It's not that kind of pain. It has nothing to do with feelings. It's not a love pain. It's a pain that you now feel, that the person's presence is now inside of you, giving you pain. Knowing her, there is just no way to describe it. You just know that it's there, forever residing in you. You can't even describe it, the pain. Pain that hasn't even truly begun to happen yet. As a voice then said to me, "For it matters not if you are her, for the pain shall be the same, as if you was not her. For she now has the control and authority to bring pain upon you. For every touch she has, you shall feel from her in pain." Wishing I could remember anything at all. But up until this point, nothing. With nothing but emptiness inside me, with nothing but the loneliness that resided within me. As we then sat down, a man then entered into the diner carrying what seemed to a paper of some kind, holding it up, showing it to everyone that came in contact with. As he then approached us, showing the sheriff the picture, saying to him, "Sheriff, please, my boy is missing. Have you seen him?" With the sheriff then replying, "You know what? He does look familiar to me in a way. I think I may have seen him earlier in the day. But I tell you what, I will keep an eye out for him. One of my deputies will help you fill out a missing person report." Just as the sheriff then turned looking to me, smiling, as just stared at me. With the man then turning to me, looking at me, I could see a tear running down his cheek, as he showed me the picture of his son, asking me if I had seen him, saying to him, "I am sorry, I don't know who he is. I don't even know who I am." As the sheriff just looked to me, grinning away, as a cold chill then suddenly came over me. With the sound of laughter only I could hear, as the feeling of loneliness hit me even harder this time. As I then looked to the man, as tears began to flow from him, as he stood there saying, "I don't understand what happened to him. We are a very caring family that loves one another very much." Looking at him with sadness, I told him that I hope you are able to find your son, as he then thanked me and the sheriff. Slowly, he walked away, thinking to myself, would he find his son, and would I find my own family? As the voice once again said to me, "Pain, pain you shall forever know." Later, as we made our way to the hospital, finding myself lost as I sat there looking out at the houses as we passed by them, wondering to myself, could one of them be mine, as we drove down the road looking out at the people as we passed by them. Looking at them, wondering to myself if I had a family, a mom, a dad, or brother, or a sister. Someone to call my own, someone to call family. Was someone missing me? Or was there no one there to miss me? Looking out at the houses, I also saw houses that had a look of emptiness to them, with no one there. No one at all. Alone it sat, with no inside. Just like me. No one else inside of me. The one I once was, now forever lost. As I looked at them, abandoned and forgotten, as the voice once again said to me, "Alone and lost, you shall forever be." Thinking that no one even cared, that maybe I was abandoned, forgotten about, and no one cared for me, just as the sign on the side of the road read, "One way." For there was only one way for me now, one way to know, and that was to remember, as the feeling of being abandoned and forgotten about. That was to be my memory for me, forevermore. Pulling into the hospital, getting out, we then made our way into the hospital. As we then sat down, a woman then approached us, not knowing who she was. The sheriff then leaned towards me with a grin, smiling at me, saying, "This is Nurse Chloe," and that she was going to try to help me. But that name, Chloe Grace Moretz's, would forever haunt me, forever knowing and feeling pain from her. Being one, while, let's just say that you wish that you were dead, while knowing the pain that they will bring you, for the pain was so unbearable, would later come to haunt me, leaving me knowing nothing but pain. As Chloe then grabbed my hand, she then asked me to try to see if I could remember anything, anything at all. Closing my eyes, trying to think back just as an image, then began to appear an image of me standing in front of a mirror. Standing there, looking into the mirror, trying to remember it all. All I could see was an image of me smiling, grinning back at me, saying to me, "Pain, you shall forever know me, knowing pain. One, you shall forever be. The other, just know it's coming her, forever knowing their pain." Screaming out, "Please, please someone help me to remember." As the nurse then placed her hands on my shoulders, as she then turned to the sheriff, saying, "I think it is best that she spends the night here, and we will go from there." Looking at me, she said to me, "I assure you that we will find answers for you, that everything was going to be okay, but for now we're going to have you spend the night here." As we got up to head to the room, the sheriff then placed his hand on my shoulder, looking to me with a grin, saying to me, "Everything is going to be okay. I promise. I now need you to stay here tonight. Now do you your best for Dakota here, and she will take care of you." As the voice then once again said to me, "Leaving you to only knowing pain. Oh, and one last thing, I will see you later." Looking at the sheriff, with him just grinning to me. As he then turned and made his way to the exit, I thought to myself, everything will be okay, I hope. Making our way to the room with Chloe, now looking inside of the other rooms. Some were empty and some had people, but a few rooms I could see only had one person with no visitors. I could not help but to think to myself, will I get a visitor? Will someone come looking for me? As I looked into one room, I saw an old man sitting there in his bed, looking out of his window out into a world of memories. Thinking to myself, did he have anyone? Or is he alone? As I thought that to myself, he then looked at me and smiled. He then spoke to me with a tear in his eye, saying, "Hello, young lady. How you doing today?" Smiling back to him, I replied, "I could be better." Smiling back to me as he then looked away from me, looking out of window into the world for which he would soon leave. But then he suddenly looked back at me, smiling and grinning, saying to me, "Memories. I have a lot of memories of my life. Memories that I cherish. Memories of my childhood. Memories that you will never get back. Why did you do it? What was you looking for? What was you hoping for? For the only thing that you shall know is pain." Jumping back, startled, I thought to myself, why was he saying that? Why did he speak to me, telling me, asking me these things? Quickly grabbing Chloe as I pointed to the old man with Chloe, then grabbing me saying, "Wait right here," as she walked over to him. All of a sudden, she called for assistance. Other nurses came walking into the room, with Chloe then walking out from the room and over to me saying, "Let's just get you to your room." Thinking about the old man as we then walked into the room, thinking about what he had said, I asked Chloe if he was all right, with Chloe then looking at me, grabbing my hand, telling me that he had passed away, that he was already gone from the time that I pointed towards him from that moment. But with me not able to even think of anything, as Chloe then handed me a hospital gown to put on, she then placed her hand in my cheek, saying to me, "I know you are scared right now. I know that you are thinking about the old man, but you have to know that things like that happen here. You want to think that life goes on, that life continues. I know it's hard. I know that you need to get some rest for tomorrow. And I will come back to check on you. But for now, if you need anyone, just press the call button and someone will come." Looking to Chloe with a smile as I lay there on my pillow as she then left the room. Thinking to myself, that maybe in the morning when I wake, that my memories would return. Looking out of the window and into the night sky. Just before I fell asleep, dreaming that I was standing there looking out of the window out into the night sky with all of its stars looking back at me. But of in the distance a house, I could in the distance, walking closer to it, I could see people in it laughing, playing, enjoying each other's company as the sun slowly started to rise, shining its first light upon the house, brightening up the house. I could feel the warmth, the love as it radiated around me. As I walked around inside, I then saw a man and woman and child standing there smiling at me, with the man standing with his back to me, covering his face as he cried. I could feel sadness as it filled the room, recognizing the man from the diner as they then started to speak, asking me, "Why did you leave us? Where did you go? We were worried for you." I then looked at them and asked, "Who am I to you? Who was I? And are you my family?" With the woman smiling as she cried, looking at me and saying to me, "Why did you do it? What was hoping for? What was you looking for?" Just then, little boy looked up to me saying, "But you promised that you would never leave, that you would be here for me as I grew up." With tears now running down my face, he then asked me, "Do you not love me no more? Did I not mean anything to you?" Falling to my knees, trembling, reaching with my hands out to him, saying, "Please tell me who I was to you. Please, are you my family?" Just the many voices then started screaming, saying, "Pain, pain, you shall know, pain, forevermore. For pain is what you asked for, knowing nothing but pain, forevermore. But this is what you wanted. This is what you asked for." With me screaming, "Why did I ask for pain? Please tell me. What do you mean this is what I wanted? Why did I ask for pain? Tell me." Just the light outside began to turn to darkness, and with a smile and a grin, they all three looked at me and said, "You will never know us again. You will never see us again. For pain, pain is all that you shall know." As they kept repeating it over and over again, smiling and laughing at me, saying, "You did what you did. You done what you done. Now you will never know us again. You will never see us again, for alone you will forever be, knowing nothing but pain, only knowing that you are the one who you are now, the one you asked to be, for the one you that you seen. When you looked into the mirror and saw the person standing there before you, that forever, you shall be that person. For what you did will never be undone. With one smile from them, with one last look, I woke screaming and yelling. What did I do? For God's sake, what did I do? Please tell me. Just as the nurses came running into the room, grabbing hold of me, trying to calm me down. Just as jumped up screaming, running out into the hall, running for the door. Not knowing where I was going, but only knowing I had to get there, for me to know and to understand what it was that I did. What did I do? What did I write? Running out the hospital, running and screaming, thinking of the dream. Who was they? I thought of the sheriff and of Dakota on whether they could even really help me. Finding out later that there was no one coming to help me. As I continued to run, not knowing where I was going, but knowing something had to happen. Coming to a stop, falling to the ground, screaming, what did I do? What in the hell did I do? Looking around, I saw a church slowly making my way, dragging my body onto the concrete steps as I cried, as I screamed, help me! Help me, please God, help me! Please, would someone, anyone help me? Inching closer to the door, my cries grew louder. Please, I beg of you, help me! Help me! With my voice lowering, as my cries for help grew softer, fighting back the tears, begging, pleading, with all I had left, I cried out, don't leave me here like this. Please don't leave me here like this. I beg of you. I plead of you. Please help me. As tears ran down my face, thinking to myself, as laid there saying to myself, I don't want to be alone, please don't anyone care, I don't want to die alone. Laying there on the church steps, I could take no more, with every thought that went through my mind thinking of what did I do. I then begun to shout, please tell me, what did I do? Please. After a few minutes had passed, coming to my wit's end, screaming and shouting as I cried, what did I do? Would you please tell me what I did? As I sat there with my arms reaching out towards the sky above me, saying, tell me, as the tears flowed from me down onto the concrete steps where I sat, feeling myself slowly losing everything around me. Lying there thinking to myself, is there any help? Was there any help for me? Or was I just to let go of everything, knowing everything I was, everything I knew, everyone around me was gone to me? As I passed out on the church steps, as I then dreamed, I could see an individual walking slowly up to me as an eeriness surrounded him, with the feeling of all hope now lost to me. As he then got closer to me, as the voices then screamed to me saying, pain, pain, you shall forever know. With his eyes that seemed a solid white from a distance, now just a pitch black feeling, a void from within him held no escape. The darkness surrounding him with the void of any light. Behind him I could feel pain, agony, loneliness, fear as it takes over you, covering every inch of you. As I could see all of them dancing around saying to me, pain, pain, you shall know forevermore. With all hope now forever leaving me, along with feeling of being lost forever in darkness, that you will never see any light of any kind again. As the fear begun to grow worse over me, as loneliness, real loneliness, begun to set in, as he then began to set in. As once again they all danced around saying to me, pain, pain, you shall know forevermore. As the individual then said to me, is this not what you wanted? Is this not what you wrote? Replying to him, what did I write? What did I want? As he stood there motionless, just staring at me with his darkened eyes, as they all danced around saying to me, pain, pain, is all you shall know forevermore. As the individual then said to me, I will temporarily open you mind to yet you see for yourself. For what did you see when you looked into the mirror? Trembling as I could feel, my mind slowly coming back to me, I could see myself sitting at a desk looking at a picture of a girl, the girl that I was now. Seeing myself standing in front of a mirror looking closer, I saw what was written on the mirror. Your soul you sold for her you are. As they danced around me saying to me, forever you shall be her, knowing pain. For I was now the girl in photo, remembering now running from out of the bathroom, running out into the rain, finding myself there on the sidewalk, with my mind and memories now open to me. I now knew what I asked for. But what was next for me? What do I do now? Looking at me with a blank stare, the being then spoke to me, saying, For you think we answer all requests. Do you think everyone that sells their soul always gets what they want? Laughing at me as he then continued to speak, saying, if 1,000 people sold their souls to us, to be a billionaire, all we have to do is to float them a single little idea. Then the one who acts on it gets it, maybe. As far the rest, well, they get to live for now till we take them. As they danced around me, saying to me, forever you shall be her, knowing pain. For you see, we really do not have to do anything for anyone at all. For all we need to do is to keep you, asking for it, to make you want it more and more, giving you just enough to keep you in our grasp, to keep you from the truth that you always knew, but refused, to keep you from what was true to you. For in the end, all we have to do is nothing. For how can you sell something that is already ours? For if you do not serve a purpose to us, then why would we even bother with you at all? Looking at him, I ask, then why me? Why did you answer my request? As they danced around me, saying to me, pain, pain, pain you shall know forevermore. With a laugh, the being spoke to me, saying, because we can. Simple to break your mother and father's faith? To watch your sons slowly slide into not having faith? To bring pain to them? To watch them as they lose faith by not knowing what happened to you? For once you truly walked with the one above. But that changed, as all we had to do was just simply put a single thought into your mind, starting with a single little dream. Laughing as then spoke one last thing, saying, to just watch you as you hopelessly lost your mind over time. As they danced around me, saying to me, pain, pain, and more pain. For as you are now, cast out from the people you shall be. A stranger you will be to them. Alone you will remain till we come for you. Then begins the real pain. And one last thing he then said to me. Know and understand that this was what you asked for. For just because that you are now one of them, doesn't mean that won't stop you from feeling unimaginable pain from the other. For even though you are her, it will still be the same as if you were not her. For you shall see that becoming her, it will still be the same as if you was not her. For from that day on, you shall forever be her, knowing the other in ways that you could not even possibly imagine, knowing the pain that she will put over you. For that is the price of being one of them, forever knowing the other in forever in pain, laughing as he then vanished back into the night. I just sat there thinking to myself everything that I lost, everything that I was, everyone around me that knew me, loved me, now forever gone from me. Knowing now that there was nobody coming for me, knowing there was no help for me, I was alone. For the very thing that gave me my identity, I sold to be who I am now, the girl that I am now, forever lost to the world, in world where I had no identity, thinking to myself as strangers would walk by, for they are a stranger to me, as I am a stranger to them. For I have become a stranger in the very town. I lived in a town that I grew up in. But just as I felt my memory began to go, I knew that the life that I once knew, the life that I lived, would be no more. Knowing that in my life, that not only did I write a binding contract on Chloe Grace Moretz's, but on Dakota Fanning as well, being one of them, while knowing and feeling the other in pain. But even worse, just before my memory left, one thought was left, as I sat there on the steps of the church, and that the young man in the picture that the man was holding in the diner was me, and the man was my father, screaming out, "No!" Just as my memories left me forever, my last thought was I was forever her, forever alone, forever knowing her, knowing pain,